everybody. I'm Dr Fragola. I'm a dentist from Madrid, and I'm part of the faculty VIVADENTAL Institute. And it's my pleasure to share this webinar, who's going to be based on 3P concept and fully edentulous patients. We're going to just start saying that we are in a world that it's changing, and we are performing the digital transformation. And what we really know is that the 90% of the patients know this, and they would just, go for this kind of treatments if they see there's some digitation on their approaches. So we start with a planning perspective. And we know that planning is key. So we need to achieve those final results from the beginning, just letting our team work, establishing the final restoration prior to think about the implants. So why not going prosthetically driven? This means we are not going just to plan the implants, we are going to plan the restorations and then place the virtual implants. So always better think about prosthetics, not just about surgery. So that's why we developed this 3P concept based on the planning, printing, and then placement of the implants. What does this mean? Our basic principle is make it simple but significant. So try to do things as easy as possible, but to achieve a very successful result. And where can we apply this concept? In our dental journey. So every day, not only dental implants, but in other things like prosto or aesthetics. Which are the steps that we have to follow? First, we have to plan. And to plan, we need to use technology. We need to use software. Nowadays, there's no need to do this kind of wax-ups in the plaster model, so we can do it virtually. But first, we need to create our virtual patient. We need clinical research. We need to listen to the patient to get his complaints. And we are going to create this virtual avatar. It doesn't mean that it has to be a realistic patient. We need models. We need the occlusion. And then we start developing our treatment. So just to start, what we are going to do is collect all this data. So the CBCT, the STL, we are going to fuse them, and then we will create our treatment planning. So at least we need 3 items. We need the CBCT, we need the STL file, and then we need the planning software. Related to the CBCT, we know that with the CBCT, it's more than enough to get this information, but we have to be very careful on how we get these images. Okay, we need to create spacing between arches, and we need to just, let's say, avoid this kind of scatterings in low-quality CBCTs. Then related to the STL files, we can either go with an intraoral scanning, and we all know that not all intraoral scanners perform the same, or we just can make a plaster model, send it to the lab. This is my lab, and we are going to scan it with a robotic arm, and the software is even going to be able to identify the undercuts and the non-good result in the scanning. But there is a big problem. We have a lot of information in different languages, and we have to fuse it. So there's a solution, and the solution is just software. Software nowadays is the key. We have to use different kind of softwares, and we need to work with them daily. We need to understand them, and if not, we have to look for help. This, plus the artificial intelligence with this kind of virtual assistances that we have right now, it's going to help us to be better in planning, and we need to plan. Once we have the plan, we are going to print different things. What can we print? We can print plaster models, education models, let's say not plaster, education as it was plaster. We can print as well some calibration matrices to be sure that the sleeve that we are going to insert in the guide for the surgery is going to fit perfectly. So this is something that we have to do, or the lab. We are going to be able to print surgical guide in different materials, different designs with different printers, but we need to understand how to print, how to polymerize, and which is the resin that it's more accurate for this. We can also, or the lab can print the models. This is a weak point. If we don't have our workflow, if we don't validate the printing models, it's going to be a complete mess, because we are not going to be able, for example, to do this kind of metal veneered structures. Then we can even print trying a structure, so we can mill a bar, then print the restoration and send it to the clinic to place it in patient's mouth and check occlusion, aesthetics, phonetics. And we can also print some digital aids. We can print impression trays. We can print scanning jigs to make our life easier, base plates to make vertical dimension, and also scan plugs that we can insert on top of the scan body. We can cut it to the desired height, and then we can scan both arches to make a relationship in between both. Related to the implant placement, okay, we're going to talk about the fully edentulous patient. These are the steps that we have to follow when we do an analogic workflow. It's a long work. So now what we think is we have to shorten our stays in the clinics. Patients don't like to come to the clinics, so we try to reduce the time. So we are starting to achieve this kind of treatments with the full denture of the patients, okay? If the full denture fits perfectly, okay, we leave it like this. If it's not, we have to reline it. We are using their ready opaque resin that is just giving us the perfect shape of the soft tissue. Then what we are going to do is add some markers. Related to the markers, we can use a lot of different devices. I have tried them all, and for me the best are these small spheres that are made out of quartz. You can see them on the bottom part of the slide, and they're going to give us some information to merge different files, okay? We're going to perform a CBCT of the patient wearing that denture with that markers. So we're going to get the conventional STL file with these small dots. As you can see here, you can see there are some circles, red, green, blue, and yellow, showing these markers on the X-ray. And in the X-ray that it's in the background, you can see a small rounded ball that you can see there, and it's showing how it looks like when you get the CBCT. That, in my protocol, the next step would be creating a virtual maxillary. We do it with lab silicone, and what we do is just place the upper or lower denture in that plaster, and then we made some cuts, and this will help us to scan either the denture, then the base, and the denture in the base, so we are able to merge those files in the software. Then what we can do is also scan it with an intraoral scanner or with the CBCT as well and convert it. So now we have the upper STL file, the lower the occlusion, and we can also scan the upper or the lower arch with the scan body, the soft tissues, but scanning lower sometimes it's not so easy because of the mobility of the soft tissues, but we can do it. And then we sell all these files to the lab, so they're going to start building up a workshop. We can also transfer the craniomaxillary position with virtual devices, as well as the movements of the TMJ that we can even export to the software to make a better dynamic workshop. So all this information, it's in the lab, so the dentist or the clinical prosto guy has to prepare something, and the dental lab, the meanwhile, is going to do another thing. So they are going to create a workshop based on what we have sent and our needs, and in the meanwhile what we are going to do is match those files. So the CBCT and the STL file that we got with the denture and with the primary workshop are going to be mixed in the software. So we will plan the implants based on this information. We have to choose the right software that has all the libraries of the implants that we are going to use, and then we are going to be able to design the guide. Once we decide the guide, we can even do this kind of very nice images to explain the patient what we are going to do. So it's not just a matter of doing things, but showing things to give value to our work. This is how the guide is going to look like, with some stabilization pins. You can see there are no palatal pins, but for me it's more than enough to have this kind of support in the palate and in the tuberosity, so it's going to be really stable. And then what we can either do is, okay, we have the planning, we have the implant position, we're going to add some virtual scan bodies to that file and send it back to the lab. Why? Because the lab is going to readapt our primary workshop to the final position of the implants to create, let's say, like the final restoration, how it looks like. So in the upper line, you can see the initial workshop and where the scan bodies were going out of that denture. And then in the lower, what you can see is how the lab is going to be able to readapt, creating that space to house those scan bodies, because at the end the scan bodies are going to be like the indicator or the emergence profile of our implants. So then what we are going to do is we are going to design as well a temporary guide for the pickup during the final part of our treatment. So we are going to place the implants and then we're going to add the restoration. This is how the virtual restoration is going to look like with those holes, because we need to create space for the temporary abutments. And this is how we convert this guide to a surgical temporary guide with the pins in the same position. So once we got this, we can show it once more to the patient, showing that we are going to place those implants and we are going to restore it. And this is how the guide looks like, okay? So you can add magnets, you can add pins. This is not a stackable guide because we didn't have much space, but what we were going to do is a primary guide with 4 pinholes that will be just stabilizing the guide. We place the implant, then we take that guide out and taking out the pins, and then we place the second guide and pins into position to fix it and to do the pickup. If we want to do the restoration, we can do a couple of things. We can either print the restoration. If it's too long, it might get weak, so it might break. That's why we reinforce it with some metal wires, or you can even mill it in PMMA or different materials. Okay, this is how the printed guide looks with a sterilizable resin. It's an SG resin that you can put inside the autoclave with no deformation. Some different views, and you can see how we stabilize in the palate and in the tuberosity. And this is how it looks printed temporarily, that you can even stain. But the common points in between both of them are the pinholes. Then, just to show you an easy case, I'm going to make an example based on the 3P concept, the planning, printing, and placing. So, it's a patient who's going to have a restoration because there are some non-restorable teeth, and the patient is tired of going to the dentist, having, this kind of crown lengthening, endos, post-core, and things like this. So he decided he wants to just have a fixed restoration. So what we are going to do is first plan the surgery. For this, what we are going to do is we make a CBCT, and then with the scanner, we're going to plan the implant position based on the wax-up. So that's why we can see the X-ray on the first row. Then in the second row, we're going to see one guide. It's the bone reduction guide, because this case is going to be done with stackable guides, so I can show you different approaches. And then in the lower row, what you can see is the guide to drill the implant beds. And the last picture is going to be about the restoration that also is going to be stacked in the bone reduction guide. So this is my VR approach. This is the way I show my patients what I'm going to do, as well as my colleagues. So what I done them, you have the, let's say at this moment you have the lower. We're going to install a primary guide to drill pins. This is a teeth-supported guide. So we will make 3 holes. Then we will take it out. We will fix the bone reduction guide, and we have the holes for the pins. We will perform the extractions. Here, I cannot do the extraction virtually. So I explain my patient, okay, if one guide is going to be there, we extract, we superimpose or we stack the second, the drilling guide, and when it's ready, we are going to place some abutments inside the implant and stack the temporary guide to make the pickup and do the final restoration. So that's the way we give value to our treatment, and patient understand why do we have to print so many things. So this is not just to justify, let's say, the price, which is not so important for me. It's to justify the need to go for this. Okay? So when we are just going to perform, once we print the guide, you can see the printed models in here. We always make a, let's say, validation model because patients are not in the office, so we need to be sure that the guides perfectly fit and there are no, let's say, resins is disturbing the perfect fit. On the upper row, you can see the fixation pin guide inside the model. Then the bone reduction guide and the drilling guide here. You can see it here. And then in the lower, what you can see is the temporary and how it fits in the stack on top of the implant pin bed. So next step, the easiest one, it's placing the implants. We are going to do it on a guided way, right? In most of these approaches, what we use is self-tapping, self-cutting implants to reduce the compression in the bone. So we try to be polite with the bone. It's going to be a big treatment, and the tension is going to be distributed in between all the implants. So I'm just going to show you the step-by-step. So this is the first step that we do. We get the fixation pin guide, we insert on top of the teeth, and then we drill through the lateral holes that you can see on the image just to fix the second guide. Okay, we need a common point, and the common point is the pins. We can do an interim or intermediate guide. This means we know by literature that tooth support guides perform better than the soft tissue or bone guides. So just remember that in this case, patient has a lot of still teeth in his mouth, 6 of them. So we are going to install that guide and drill through it the posterior implants. Then what we are going to do once we place these implants is we are going to stack or place the bone reduction guide. This guide is going to be fixed by pins. You may have 3 pins, 4 pins, as much as you want, but at least 3 pins, otherwise it will tilt. So you leave it there and you stack the drilling guide. Okay, so once we install the drilling guide and we drill all the implant beds, we place the implants, we add the multi-units and prepare the case for the restoration. So we have this final restoration that can be either milled or printed, that is going to fit perfectly. If it doesn't fit, it's just because we need to create a little bit more space for the temporary abutments, but it's very easy to stack it and fix it with resin, composite, or different materials to be able just to fix the restoration to the implants, right? Once we do this, we just unscrew the restoration, take it out, and start the finishing with this capillary screws technique, just being sure that there is no resin inside the temporary abutment, because if not, it will be not possible to remove it. So we do the finishing, or the lab technician can work with us in a teamwork approach in our office, just finishing while we are doing some suturing or grafting or whatever is required, or just relaxing a little bit. Then just imagine we have had the final osseointegration period, so we are going to perform digital impressions either with this kind of cylindrical scan bodies or horizontal flags to have a precise result. It depends on your approach and your validated protocol. And it's really important to record the vertical dimension once again. But remember, we can print, we can test. It's not just for the final one. It's just to do a printed try-in to be sure that phonetics, aesthetics, and everything is correct. So we are going to print some model. Once again, we need to validate this protocol. What we always do is check it in the mouth. We just do this conventional approach. We can cut this kind of resins, loot them to be sure that our model is going to be 100% precise, because we want the restoration to be passive. Once we do this, we send it to the lab. The lab is going to do the readaptation of the wax up, and they are going to just perform a very nice restoration that we can print. We always mill the bar because we want to have testing of our work prior to continue doing things. And then what we do is print a try-in. The try-in comes like this out of the printer, but we can easily stain it, so it's going to be very nice looking. And we always try to do the restoration, even it's a try-in, a temporary, as nice as we can, so we can get information from the patient saying these teeth are too long, too short, too dark, too light, whatever it's required, we need to do it. We don't make ugly restorations. We need to be sure that everything is okay. So we can check the occlusion, the phonetics, and we can even send the patient home with this kind of restorations, come back in a couple of days, tell me what you like, what you don't like, and how to change it, so we can even print it again. And this is how it looks, the printed one and the zirconia, the final one. And this is the hybrid concept. What we are always doing, it's an interim titanium bar and then a milled structure of zirconia that we can easily stain. So what we know is that all the tension that makes the structures to be left flexible are going to be blocked by the titanium bar. So you can see the outer and the inner, and finally how it looks like once it's installed with its correct vertical dimension, with the overbite, overjet. But this is something that we are not going to correct now. We did it in the trying process. So thank you for your time.